Welcome back to the Fandom Zone podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the Fandom Zone, ready to talk more Jupiter's Legacy with my wonderful friend, wonderful co-host, and someone who is very happy that his Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs, DJ Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, Charles, I'm doing very well, thank you. And yes, indeed, we kind of squeaked through there, and I guess we'll see how long it lasts. I'm obviously enjoying the ride while it lasts, but I guess we'll see how deep we get in. And other than that, doing very, very well. And how about yourself?
Well, obviously, I'm going to have to start rooting for the Canadiens like we were talking about before we started recording because, well, my Columbus Blue Jackets suck, and they continue to suck. So at least yours are in. And if I, maybe if I root for the Canadiens, then, that at least gives me somebody to root for, right? So it gives me at least a reason to watch the playoffs now.
Yes. One of the few people who doesn't root for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to be a contrarian, and who better than me, right?
That's right, exactly.
I've got decades of experience with that. All right, so here in episode 218, Nick and I are going to be discussing what's the use, and please don't say that's about our podcast, right? Like, what's the use of this podcast? That's an episode title. Just leave it there. And Cover Her Face, which are the 5th and 6th episodes of Jupiter's Legacy that came out back on May 7th, 2021.
Yep.
And I'm very interested to talk about these with you because there's a lot going on now. We're kind of starting to see where the series is going, or at least where they want the series to go. But interestingly, at this halfway mark, there was a change in showrunner as a little behind-the-scenes stuff went on where Stephen DeKnight, I guess, had some quote-unquote creative differences.
Right.
That old standby. And dropped out of the series, so he was replaced by Sung Kyu Kim, who was the writer of Cover Her Face. And so I'm kind of curious to see where this show goes from here.
Yeah.
We're going to discuss, obviously, episodes 5 and 6, and then, we have the final 2 episodes next week to discuss. But I'm very curious to see how that goes. What do you think?
Well, it's true because to be honest, I don't see the storyline concluding with just this one season. I mean, I can see maybe the 1929 stuff to a certain extent, but also after that, there's so much more to explain.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't see them doing it in 2 episodes. Seeing also the length of some of these episodes, I don't see them doing it. Not to mention, as I said, you are following 2 storylines.
Right.
Very closely, and you're constantly going between one and the other. I wonder whether, granted, I don't know if there's news whether Netflix had ordered another season or not. Or if for now this is all we have?
Yeah, not yet. So it's a little concerning because, well, you're setting up these storylines, but if you're not having that big payoff and you're not sure you're getting a second season, but maybe they're just hoping. I guess we have to wait and hope, and that the ratings are good. But this could be another situation of another one and done from Netflix, which concerns me because it's not like that hasn't happened before from Netflix.
They do have a track record in that sense. So I guess we'll have to see because I just hope they don't rush it with the fear of we might not get another season. Let's wrap it up as sort of speedily as we can and sacrifice good storytelling for that reason. Hopefully that won't be the case because so far I'm really, really enjoying this. But I was just thinking to myself from the storytelling standpoint, how do you do it in 2 other episodes? I just don't see it happening. I think we'll probably end maybe on a cliffhanger. And just have to cross our fingers and hope we'll get a second season. Or they might wrap, because you're going to have to give precedence to one of the 2 storylines if you want to close it up properly. Because with the 1929 stuff and the current day, one of the 2 is going to have to give, I think, if you want to have something satisfying by the end. I could be wrong, but that's the way I'm kind of seeing it at this point.
Well, from what I noticed, this Jupiter's Legacy was in Netflix's trending section. It was that it was one of their top 10 most viewed.
Yeah.
When that first week. So I'm guessing everybody just binged the thing at once because it was only 8 episodes, which is the kind of thing that Netflix I think likes.
Well, that's their business model, I think.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So hopefully that whatever that for that week, it was enough to convince them, okay, maybe we'll go ahead and do another season of this.
We can only hope. I mean, it went to number 1 over here in Italy as well. It's currently sitting at number 6, so it's still in the top 10, which is not bad.
Okay. But it is good. That means at least it has some legs.
Yeah.
So here's hoping. I mean, I'm glad it's doing well overseas.
So far, it seems
so. That's an encouraging sign, because if it's doing good in other markets, they might be willing to pony up the budget to create a second season.
I mean, I actually talked to a friend of mine over here the other day who'd actually seen the whole thing. He was one of the bingers. And he said he really, really enjoyed it. And this is a man who's never picked up a comic in his life.
Really?
I mean, he's a superhero movie and TV show fan, but he's never read a comic. I mean, big fan of the MCU, big fan of the DCEU and all this kind of stuff. He said, I absolutely loved it. It was great. But yeah, as I said, he is a non-comic book reader, but he really enjoyed it. So I guess he was kind of like my soundboard, if you will, when it came to the show. I said,
but he's somebody who appreciates superhero TV shows.
That's right. So that's why I think he'd be one of the, one of the members of the audience that possibly Netflix is looking at, one of their target audience members.
Well, let's hope so. Yeah, unfortunately, here in the States, Netflix isn't tracked ratings-wise like the networks are.
Right, sure.
So it's kind of hard to gauge about how well a show did.
Exactly.
All we can rely on is their own data that they're so reluctant to provide anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure exactly in some high office they have the number of times a show was downloaded or viewed, kind of like with us with our podcasts. So I guess it's the same kind of thing. But hopefully they will renew it, because I'd hate for it to be a truncated story and just be.
I'd like to at least get one more season if we're to wrap up the storylines.
Yeah, I mean, depending, obviously. I mean, I haven't seen episodes 7 and 8 yet, so I don't know. But yeah, it's still, regardless, I'd still want more, because it's a really, really well done show so far.
Yeah, I think so. All right. So episode 5 was written by Kate Barno, who is notable because she wrote several episodes of the HBO series True Blood, which Lori and I were fans of back in the day. And the second episode, the 5th episode, Cover Her Face, was written, like I said, by Sang Kyu Kim, the new showrunner. Both episodes, and this seems to be the case, that they're doing these in 2-episode blocks throughout this season. So episodes 5 and 6 were both directed by Charlotte Brännström, who is interesting because, for one thing, she's going to be directing at least one of the episodes of the new Lord of the Rings series for Amazon.
Which we're still waiting on.
We're supposed to be getting it sometime in 2021, which probably will be like, if we get in 2021, it'll be like December 31st, 2021.
Yeah, exactly.
By all accounts. But she's also directed episodes of The Witcher, Arrow, which is interesting, and Outlander.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting directing resume for television. But yeah, she directed 5 and 6, and especially notably 6, because that is such a big sea adventure movie, a little bit.
Yeah.
Where most of everything that's set in 1929 takes place aboard this boat, as we're sailing toward what everybody hopes is Sheldon's Island.
Exactly.
So his dream island, and I thought it made for a very gripping drama. I can't wait to talk about that episode. Because I think that's my favorite episode of these two this week. All right, new cast this time. We have the introduction of Paul Amos as Barnabas Wolfe, who is a very interesting character.
What a character!
Yeah, very flamboyant character, but interesting nonetheless. He's been in episodes of Designated Survivor, Warehouse 13, and Lost Girl. The last two aired on Sci-Fi Channel here in the States.
Okay.
In the 6th episode, we have David Julian Hirsch, who is introduced as Dr. Richard Conrad, who is someone who we will find out becomes one of the Union. I won't say which one yet, but I know. He was in the movie Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and has appeared in episodes of Grimm, Weeds, and the TV version of La Femme Nikita.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is actually a good movie. First movie that George Clooney ever directed.
Yeah, it was. And it was based on Chuck Barris, the Gong Show host.
Yeah. And then he went on to do Good Night and Good Luck. So, I mean, it goes to show you what George Clooney what kind of movies George Clooney likes to direct.
Pretty much, yeah. It's almost becoming like he's a better director than an actor these days.
Yes.
Yeah. Then we had Kara Royster as Jenna Croft, a.k.a. Ghost Beam, once again. And Chase Tang played Baryon.
Nice.
Now, I just have one bit of trivia.
Okay.
So, in the comics, Barnabas Wolfe first appears in this comic I'm holding in my hot little hands.
Oh, nice.
Jupiter's Legacy number 5. I don't know if you can see that image there.
Yes, indeed.
That's what Frank Quitely draws him as.
Apologies, those in podcast land, but I was treated to a very nice comic book cover.
Exactly. Obviously, I understand. Yeah, you out there, you wonderful listeners out there, you can't see what I'm holding, but Nick can, so he gets the perks. He's the co-host, I guess. So, but he was introduced in the comics as a major in the U.S. government's anti-terror unit, whose responsibility was to find any unlicensed superhumans.
Okay.
And I could tell you more, but that would be spoiling some future events, potentially.
Right, okay. No, that's fine.
So if we do get more episodes of Jupiter's Legacy, I don't want to spoil those for you if you haven't read the comics. So
exactly. No. Don't be like River Song. Spoilers.
Spoilers. Well, you mean
spoilers.
There you go. We love you, Alex Kingston. We love you very much.
Exactly. So 2 episodes. So let's start with our first episode. What's the use? And again, that's not about our podcast. Okay. Please keep that straight. All right. So topic number 1. Let's talk Sheldon, Jack the therapist, and Grace, as we're in 2021 setting. And this episode opens with Sheldon sitting down with a therapist. So I think a lot of us have been wondering to this point, well, Sheldon's got some issues, and he doesn't seem to be talking to anybody about said issues. But here we find out that, yeah, apparently he is talking to someone who's played by Nigel Bennett, and talking about his current situation. He talks about that things are stressful at home with Grace. Chloe won't listen to him. Brandon killed a guy and doesn't think he did anything wrong. Well, by the way, the country, 78% of the country agrees with Brandon, and I don't get how these 78% of the American people have an issue with a code that I've been spending my whole life trying to abide by.
Yeah, it reinforces that concept we were talking about, that everybody's wrong and I'm the one who's right. Mm-hmm. They don't get the game. I do.
Right. It's their fault, not me. So at least he's talking to somebody, right?
Yes.
At least he's opening up to somebody. But, the therapist is, recognizing that, that his conflict is, with the people who matter the most in his life. But, he wants to know why Sheldon's so hung up on this statistic, the 78%. And so we kind of get into a little bit of a deep dive into Sheldon's psyche a little bit. So what did you make of that?
Well, as you mentioned, I was so glad he actually talked to somebody. You'd think it would be better he maybe talked it over with Grace and not somebody who's then revealed to be pretty much one of his worst enemies, which I think was a fabulous reveal.
You love that reveal, huh?
Yes, I did. Also because it even gave it more of that Clarice Dr. Lecter vibe, as in he's almost confessing his sins to his worst enemy, and it also kind of reminded me, I don't want to kind of go too much crazy here, but with the comedian in Watchmen, when he sits on the bed of his own worst enemy who's about to die, and
Moloch.
he's telling him...
Moloch, yeah.
Exactly, with Moloch. It kind of was like that moment where, the comedian's like, I'm confessing my sins to my worst enemy. This is kind of what was going on with Sheldon, because we learn that the therapist was, a major villain at the time. And that's why you almost get that almost psychopath kind of vibe, because also the way he talks to Sheldon is clearly, okay, he's a licensed therapist, but you could tell there was something more to that, because his bedside manner every now and then tends to go a bit odd. In the sense, he calls him out on his BS, he's not understanding, he's not like, don't worry, things will get better. And those kinds of like, no, that's rubbish.
Yeah, he's almost a little bit antagonistic.
Yes.
And so the vibe I got from this relationship, and especially, as we get the reveal, it's almost like if Superman, because remember, Sheldon is a Superman analog.
Oh, yes, of course.
It's almost as if Superman went to the prison where Lex Luthor was being kept, his
And had a
archenemy,
talk with him.
and talked with and opened up with him because he couldn't do that with Lois Lane.
I love that comparison. I mean, maybe it's almost like who can maybe understand you more than a person you've been fighting for a large part
But that's
of your
the
life.
dynamic I got here.
Yeah.
And, so it's like, the only person that best knows me is my archenemy. It's almost like if, like like say if you had Batman feeling that he could only talk with the Joker.
And that would make for such a great story, I think. I mean, they've hinted it in some places where Batman and Joker have actually
a little
sat
hint
down
about that in Batman the Killing Joke a little bit.
Yeah.
But just I think because with Batman's nature, he's not going to reveal too much about himself to the Joker.
No, because he plays his cards too close to the vest.
But Superman is generally more open. So
he's more trusting than Batman, definitely.
Yeah, so Superman opening up to Luthor makes more sense. Especially if you consider, like, if you go way back to, like, our friend Jesse Jackson does, to the Silver Age comics, where
of course
that Lex Luthor and Superman used to be friends when they were both teens in Smallville before Superboy accidentally caused Lex's hair to fall out, and then became enemies for life because Superboy made Lex bald.
Exactly, and you hold that against Superman for the rest of your life.
For the rest of his life, yeah. I'm going to kill people. I'm going to threaten the world because I lost my hair. Because you made my hair fall out. It's all your fault. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Talk about motivation. I mean, okay.
Right. That's the way Silver Age comics were back in the 50s and 60s. So yeah.
No, true. They didn't need much of a motivation to turn somebody into a villain. But no, you make a fabulous comparison there for sure. But I really, really love this exchange. Not to mention, I'm a big fan of psychological thrillers. So that's where I was geeking out a little bit on that because of the back and forth and the discussing and how animated it started to become after a while. Like you said, the therapist was becoming rather antagonistic, and I was really enjoying it. And the writing is very, very good in this too. Mm-hmm. Both actors do a fabulous job. And it almost seems like it makes you wonder the fact that at the end of the day, is Sheldon such a lonely man? Does he really feel that he's alone? Because maybe highlights his loneliness, that he can't even open to the woman that he loves more than anything else in the world, or his brother. He literally feels misunderstood, I think. And this, I think, stems back to when nobody believed him when he was going crazy, in inverted commas. And that could maybe be a trauma from that of, they didn't believe me then, I don't feel I can open up to these people, and I have to go to another source, like my own worst enemy.
Yeah. Almost kind of makes me wonder if Sheldon is a fan of the REM song Superman. I am Superman.
I wonder
I can't do anything.
Great song, by the way. Yeah. I do wonder, had George been around Sky Fox and they'd still been friends, he probably would have talked to Sky Fox.
Probably, yeah.
That's the vibe we also get through these episodes, how tight George and Sheldon were. Mm-hmm. And he was like the only one who believed him. So I think Sky Fox or George would have been the first choice had they still been in contact. So, but yeah, he's a very troubled man. You can definitely tell them that Sheldon very much carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. And, it's important to talk to somebody. I think both, watching this show and in real life, folks, if you have a problem, don't keep it all inside. Talk to someone.
Well, that's one of the things I find, so frustrating about some people that, I keep going back to Superman on this, but for people that have a problem with Superman, that they think he's just such a bland character in their eyes.
Yeah, well, that's overpowered.
He's overpowered, exactly. He's not interesting. He's not real enough. And I'm thinking, okay, if you had the power to do all this stuff, wouldn't you feel this great responsibility to go along with that? And how that might weigh on you after a time. Exactly. And you're doing everything you can to try to, to be that beacon of hope for everybody. So I think that's what makes him an interesting character to me, at least.
Agreed, folks. Watch Superman and Lois, and you'll get that very much. That's very much highlighted in Superman and Lois.
I second that recommendation. But getting back to Jupiter's Legacy, Sheldon, in this, he talks about, and I thought this was a key moment. He talks about this reoccurring dream of his about his father's death.
Yeah.
And he mentions that he tries to stop his father from jumping off that building.
Yeah.
Every time, but is never fast enough. So translation, if only I was faster, I could have saved my dad. That's his key issue right there. And so the therapist, Jack, mentions that, well, parents aren't supposed to leave their kids by choice. And when they do, it leads the children to believe that it was their fault. And he thinks this is why Sheldon is so attached to the code.
Right.
So this is the therapist's explanation about why Sheldon is so damn fixated on that code. Because the underlying reason is he blames himself for not being fast enough to save his father.
And we actually had talked about this in previous episodes, about the fact that it was very likely that the death of his father would haunt him, because the fact of he wasn't a superhero yet, he didn't have powers yet, but it was the one man he couldn't save. And it was one of the men who mattered the most to him, because it was his dad, for crying out loud. But
so this confirmation made sense to you? Or this theory?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so, because obviously you think that since he's become the Utopian, he has saved countless lives, but I'm sure it probably haunts him at night thinking, I wasn't able to save my father.
Yeah. And so we have, let's see, one of the things that Sheldon says, this is, I guess, Sheldon sees the code about is a good way to reduce the amount of death.
Yeah.
That Sheldon needs to deal with, and he says that's all fine and good, but your enemies are almost guaranteed to want to try and kill you.
Yes.
So.
And he would know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So. He tries to give the impression that, and this is where we start getting a little bit of connection between them. And, he points out that if there was any other field similar to yours, they have the right to kill as a last line of defense.
Right, yes.
But apparently that's not...
He mentioned the military and law enforcement.
Yeah, exactly. But but the other members of the union, they have to remember this code, which is essentially if the other members of the union follow the code, then that means they're following what you do. And that's a way they remember you because you're associating yourself so strongly with that code.
Yeah, because it's literally, it defines him. It's kind of like Judge Dredd with the law. There's literally it's only black and white. It's very much, that's why it very much also reminded me of Judge Dredd in that sense, because there's no gray in between.
Yeah.
You've done wrong, you pay I won't even, try and think about all the little intricacies of every single person's crime. I'll just automatically execute them because that's what the law says.
Yeah. And so, consequently, he sees himself, and this is something you kind of picked up on, that Sheldon sees himself as a bit of Sheldon doesn't see himself as this, but the therapist kind of implies this, that he's a narcissist. And Sheldon's like, no, look, I just want to be remembered by the people that I love after I leave this world.
Yeah, because I did not think he was a narcissist either. I don't think he's in love with himself or that he thinks he's all that. I literally just think that the problem is he lets the code define him. And we see that obviously in these episodes that gets put to the test very much. But also, one could make the argument of if you don't follow the code and you just kill, do you become a vigilante? And hence does law enforcement and such allow you to carry on doing what you're doing, because there is also that as well. There's also the fact of you can't take the law into your own hands. It's saying by due process, you have to take this person, and they have to, go under trial and everything else. So I think it's also that is, where do you draw the line between being a hero and being a vigilante?
Right. And that's the whole thing that Brandon's act is, this discussion, and it's triggering, like there's these lingering effects throughout this entire series. It's this big moral debate, and it's something that is obviously not going to be explained or dealt with very soon, but it's kind of key to understanding what's really going on with Sheldon.
Yes.
And why he's so bothered by this, and why he's so bothered with Brandon, that Brandon is so willing to go against what Sheldon believes.
Which tends to sometimes, though, be the case, isn't it? Yeah. When it comes to fathers and sons or daughters saying, you have to do this, most of the time they will do the opposite.
Yeah, like, I want you to be like me, but the son is like, no, I want to be me. I don't want to be you. You're you, you be you, I'm going to be me, that kind of thing.
That's right. I mean, and Chloe makes quite that statement, in fact, to her mother, which we will get to later, but yeah.
Yeah. So later we talk, after we get some flashbacks with Sheldon breaking up with Jane, or Jane dumping Sheldon, we get back, to the therapy sessions with Jack, and they talk about that Sheldon saw Jane's leaving him as punishment for not being good enough. And he tells, Sheldon tells Jack, well, I know my code is the symbol for being good and that it's impossible to prevent tragedy. But, the world, Sheldon believes that the world hasn't always been cruel, and when people did good things, they were rewarded. And then Jack reminds him, and this is where I think it was very interesting, the world has never been this way.
Exactly. I mean, that's why it's literally a utopia. It's an ideal.
Right. And, we've discussed it, that the name, the Utopian, sums up Sheldon so perfectly, because he's a utopian at heart. He has this idyllic fantasy of how things should be, but that pesky reality getting in the way. And that's kind of what Jack reminds him of. It's like, the world's never been this way, and it's only your belief in the code that made it seem that way.
Yeah.
So you keep creating this fantasy world for yourself, this ideal utopia for yourself. So you're setting yourself up to fail because you can never reach it.
Exactly, which was one of the main points which was actually made to Sheldon by Chloe. The fact is, like, we will never be able to reach that standard, and neither will you, because it is an unreachable way to be. It's an unreachable goal, ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and as a result, Jack feels that Sheldon has constructed this barrier from the horrible things that are out there. Like, the world is a horrible place, and here you are in your little fantasy land. And this is kind of something that I think Walter brought up. Mm-hmm. That when Walter was criticizing George, it's like, hey, you're just feeding his little delusions.
That's right.
So it kind of just keeps coming back to Sheldon, being off on planet Sheldon.
True. Yeah, it's just that. Maybe it is a question of him just sticking his head in the sand and refusing to see what the world really is. Because then also I believe the point is made to him, then why do bad things happen to good people and vice versa? Yeah.
But then Jack makes a final point before we get the big reveal that, oh, hey, he's locked up in prison.
And apparently he's this psycho killer and...
Yeah, exactly. Or, like I said, maybe like the Lex Luthor to Sheldon Superman. Mm-hmm. That reality, whether you like it or not, is seeping in. Mm-hmm. And that's your problem right now, is that reality is breaking down your little fantasy world.
And it's literally traumatizing him. And I have to say, for being a prisoner, I guess he's probably on good behavior because he has quite the library and quite the amenities for being in a prison cell.
Well, maybe it's kind of like, maybe they were friends at one point, and maybe Sheldon just kind of hooks him up.
Me put in a good word saying, give him his books.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose like even in Hannibal, when he behaves himself, they give him like a toilet and the books and
the
everything
drawing,
else.
the sketch pads that he can draw on with charcoal, whatnot. But so he can sketch his pictures of Florence.
Yes. And then they literally move a library into his cell.
Yeah, exactly. Memories are all I have, Agent Starling. So, all right, that could take us down a whole other road. But anything else about Sheldon or Jack the therapist?
I absolutely just thought it was such a great scene. Some folks, I think, might have thought it went on a little bit, but I feel the two actors really kept it going. And it was a nice little pause, if you will, to kind of really, I guess, pick Sheldon's brain and see at what point he's at now. And hopefully this conversation will seep in and he will, wake up and smell the coffee.
Yeah, hopefully. Here's hoping. Now, I know that we didn't really talk about Grace much, but Grace was out there talking with Sheldon about Brandon. And she's concerned, thankfully, because Sheldon's grounded Brandon after killing Black Star, or at least the Black Star clone, as it finds out.
And grounding is taking him to his first autopsy. Okay.
Yeah, whatever, right? But Sheldon thinks he still needs to learn more accountability and responsibility. And Grace tries to get through to him, probably fails, but tries. Like, look, we're raising a superhero, but we're also raising a human being. So what did you make at least of Grace's attempt here?
Well, first off, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like their marriage is kind of strained at this point. Mm-hmm. Well, there are some strains. Granted, it seems like they have the make-up sex in the next episode, so I'm guessing that's one of the great things about, I guess, having an argument is the making up, as they say.
Yep.
But so that's what I'm thinking is probably what happened. But there it seems there's quite a few strains. They are still at odds today. And she can't get to him. It shows, I think, how pig-headed Sheldon is.
It is, yeah, it does.
And I'm glad, and hopefully, once again, it seems like if he loves her so much, he should kind of listen to her. And she also calls him out on the fact of, you just sent him off to view this autopsy as a punishment, and you didn't even consult me.
Yeah.
It's kind of, this is our kid. It's like, oh, you weren't around, so I kind of... And she's like, BS, yeah, I was here, whatever. So you kind of have to talk to your wife, Sheldon,
You kind of... you almost have to wonder, like, how did they stay married for 90 years?
It really is... it's odd, because it really made me think, you and I talked about this briefly, about the movie Giant.
Yeah.
Where you have these two folks that are married forever, and they're constantly at odds. It's very much like the couple that you get in Giant, where you have Rock Hudson and Elizabeth Taylor constantly butting heads, but they stay married forever. It's like, yeah, I agree with you. It's like, how the heck did these two even, I don't know.
Kind of sounds like my
marriage is weird.
Kind of sounds like my parents, actually, but who have been married over 60 years, but anyway, before I have to end up with my own therapy session, probably should move on. So, topic number 2, let's talk about Chloe and Hutch, because we were introduced to Hutch now, and we talked about this at the end of last week's episode, how you were just blown away by that cliffhanger of Chloe overdosing.
Yes.
So you had to know what happened next, and of course, what happens next is she's in the hospital, but Hutch is there with her. Did that surprise you?
I was shocked, because I'm sure you probably knew, Charles, because you've read the comics. So I have to say, you have a great poker face then. Because while we were discussing the episode, I'm like, behind the eyes, Charles was probably like, kind of steepling his fingers going, he doesn't know.
Excellent. Yes.
But yeah, I was blown away. I was like, huh? What's he doing there? And then 2 minutes later, they're having sex. I'm like, what is going on?
So you did not see the two of them hooking up at all?
No, I as Quicksilver would say, I did not see that coming. So,
yeah. Or you mean, as Quicksilver's future corpse said?
Very nice. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
But no, I was blown away, and it seems like apparently they've been having a relationship for quite a while,
right?
From what we gather. Granted, I guess it must be a pretty open relationship, seeing as it seems like Chloe does tend to sleep around. So either she's very libertine in her ways in her amorous ways, or they have an open relationship.
Or it could have just been like an occasional booty call.
I suppose, and I guess Hutch is cool with that, I suppose, since he always is ending up in stripper clubs for some reason because he's looking for his dad. So I don't know what's up with that.
Right.
But
so what did you?
But I was blown away, and it seems like there is quite the relationship going on. I mean, I think they do in their own way. At least Chloe, I think, possibly loves him more than Hutch does, because Hutch even actually addresses like, "Are we carrying on with this, whatever this is?"
Yeah.
So I think Hutch maybe is not as invested in the relationship. I mean, I'm sure he has a great time hanging out with Chloe and what have you. But it seems to me like Chloe is more invested in that relationship than Hutch is. Because Hutch is probably like, she'll probably get tired of me at some point, or he maybe literally doesn't love her. But Chloe really seems to be, I guess we could say, in love. And they make for an interesting couple, I suppose. And I can see why.
Right.
Why the Utopian does not know about this, because Lord knows what would happen if he found out.
Well, that's one of the things that Chloe warns him about is like, hey, my dad has never been too kind on my boyfriends.
Not to mention if it's Hutch, too, since they've been having words.
Yeah. And as we find out, since you brought it up, Hutch and Sheldon actually do have a little bit of a chat in this episode.
Exactly.
So what did you make of that?
Yes, let's have a free exchange of ideas. It's actually,
because what happens is like Sheldon pops in, like Hutch is making his back alley deal, and then Sheldon shows up. So Hutch is like, "Cheese at the cops," and teleports himself to Iowa. But Sheldon finds him pretty soon.
Yeah, and because first I think he does the typical superhero landing, and he's like, "We have to talk," and then Hutch disappears, and then apparently we find out that Sheldon has heat vision, because you see these kind of rays kind of following Hutch, and he's like, "Okay, I give," and so they start talking, and
right.
But yeah, and obviously we find out the whole deal is Sheldon is looking for Skyfox.
Yes, Hutch's father.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, because remember there's this one moment where Sheldon, Hutch tries to get his power rod to come back to him. Yes. But Sheldon has it in his hand. Mm-hmm. But because Sheldon is Sheldon, he's able to keep it from leaving.
Yeah, that's right.
Like we see a little bit of a struggle, but he holds on to it.
Because Hutch is like, "Come home," or something, or uses some...
Right.
phrase, and it doesn't work, or you see that it's the rod's trying to get away.
Yeah, like it's trying to leave his hand.
Yeah,
but for whatever reason can't. So Sheldon actually says, "Look, I'm not here to get you. I'm here just to talk about your dad." So he gives the rod back.
Yeah.
To Hutch, but I thought it was interesting that apparently Sheldon can stop the power rod.
Which I think tells you how powerful Sheldon must be.
Right.
And we've seen some hint of it, and there must be a reason why everybody lives in fear of the Utopian. Right. So he must literally be, like you said, the analog Superman.
Even at this age, he's still insanely powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Superman, who is considered one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful superhero in the DC universe. Yeah. So it stands to reason. And obviously the whole thing is, and I'm sure we'll get to it, is because they're looking for Skyfox because of what is found in the Black Star corpse.
Yes.
So yeah, and it's seemingly Hutch doesn't even know where his father is, and apparently the rod can't even take him to him, because apparently whenever he says "take me to my dad," he says, "I always end up in a strip club." So you think to yourself, either his dad literally does manage multiple strip clubs around the country, or he's in the adult industry at this point, or the rod's trying to do something.
Well, I think what happens is that probably, I'm guessing, George probably put a fail-safe in the rod
Yeah.
that if Hutch tried to use it, that it would just constantly take him, redirect him to the nearest strip club.
I guess it's kind of like maybe he's like, I know he'll be frustrated because he
Yeah.
can't reach me. At least he can vent his frustration with these lovely ladies.
It's almost like kind of like being redirected to voicemail. That it's like, look, I want to just talk to you. No, redirecting to voicemail. Oh.
Except with strippers.
Except with strippers. So upgraded voicemail. All right. I like that a lot.
That's exactly it.
Right.
So I guess it's also George's wicked sense of humor as well.
Yeah, I think so. Well, we know that George was quite the card, as we know. So, he thinks the power rod might be able to help them. Sheldon says this. But it turns out that, that, like you said, he goes up to a strip club, and then they have some choice words. Sheldon calls him son. Hutch doesn't take too kindly to that. And, he reminds Sheldon that, look, I'm not your son, I'm not anything like my father. And Sheldon comes back with, look, I looked away from everything that you've done out of respect for George because he was my friend. Mm-hmm. And all I need to know is, just let me know if George tries to reach out to you. Okay?
Yeah.
And so after that, we go back to Hutch and Chloe having another intimate moment where Hutch tells Chloe the news that, oh, by the way, your dad dropped by.
And I was like, way to kill the mood, dude.
Yeah. And Chloe, this is where Chloe talks about, he does have a thing about my boyfriends. He tries to intimidate my boyfriends. Mm-hmm. But, Hutch says, no, that wasn't the case. He was just looking for my dad. And he doesn't think that Sheldon even knows that they have a relationship. And if he did, I'm not scared of your dad.
Yeah, which actually seems to be a turn on for her because she's getting dressed.
Well, think about it.
Says that.
Well, think about it. Remember we talked about how Chloe has all these daddy issues.
Yeah.
And so, if you're someone like Chloe, you want the exact guy who wants to be nothing like your father.
Well, yeah, it's evident that she looks the opposite of her father.
Yeah.
We saw it with shall we say, the random encounter with the Nick of Time.
Yeah.
Who was playing the guy who's like, screw the union, I'm powered, but I don't believe in that stuff. What she do? She takes him to bed.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Hutch. I think that they had actually just finished having sex and they were getting all dressed and he's like, oh, I'm not scared of your father. It's like, okay, let's go at this again. So.
Right.
And I do think it's kind of makes me laugh that the character is called Hutch, like a rabbit, and they are literally at it like rabbits.
Oh, I see what you did there. That's funny.
So I just thought of that because apparently she also compliments him on his sexual prowess.
I just thought it was because his last name is Hutchence. Like his dad.
I know, but it made me kind of think of the fact that they do tend to copulate like rabbits, and she apparently compliments him on his sexual, prowess. So I'm thinking, it works both ways.
There you go. It's a win-win for everybody, right?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else about Chloe and Hutch you want to talk about?
I do wonder where it will go. It seems like a curious relationship. I don't know why, but my thought is between the two, I think Hutch would be almost more prepared to drop her than she would him. But at the same time, he does care about her because, heck, he did take her to the hospital when he found that she'd overdosed, not to mention she had snorted product that he was supposed to give somebody else. Yeah. And he actually points that out to her, but then the subject is literally dropped. Because he's like, you finished something that wasn't yours. And that's pretty much the end of the discussion.
Well, it's almost kind of like a Romeo and Juliet thing, a little bit, because she's from the hero side, he's from the villain side. Mm. And so you have the son of a hero or the daughter of a hero and the son of a villain hooking up.
Yeah, it is very much that kind of star-crossed lovers, I suppose. But I guess at the same time, I wonder how long Hutch would stick around.
Well, that's a good question. I guess we'll find out. So
Exactly.
And it depends on how close. Again, the TV show stays to the comic. We'll see.
Right. No, very true.
Okay.
But yeah, so I guess we'll see. And I'm expecting the confrontation with Sheldon at some point because they're playing it up. There's going to be a confrontation.
It's going to come out. Like, hey, Dad, I'm banging the son of Skyfox. So
yeah, exactly. Or the bathroom door opens and he comes out kind of wearing nothing. It's like, you.
And then laser beams through the chest. Oh, suddenly maybe Sheldon decides to break his code.
Shocker.
There you go. It's like, well, you wanted me to break the code, guys. Well, I just did. Get off my back.
Because even Grace, I don't think even Grace knows who Chloe is dating.
Well, we'll see. That's a discussion I think that comes up in the next episode.
Ah, okay, yeah, because at that moment, Hutch is in the bathroom when Grace hovers by Chloe's window. So I guess how convenient that he is not in the room at that moment.
Right. I mean, unless Grace has X-ray vision. Just saying.
Ah, okay. Nice.
Just saying. All right. Topic number 3. Let's move on. Let's talk about Barnabas Wolfe and the Black Star clone. So we finally get back to the Black Star clone mystery after a couple episodes off.
Yeah.
And this is where Brandon is sent to check out the autopsy of the Black Star clone.
Which is supposed to be his punishment, mind you.
Right, exactly. So they're at the Union headquarters. Brandon's talking with his Uncle Walter once again. So these two obviously have a pretty good relationship by now, once again. So while they're waiting for somebody else to arrive, so apparently Brandon doesn't like, and as we'll find out, probably has good reason. So Brandon's trying to act like, well, I'm fine, I'm good. But Walter's suspicious of this. Walter says, I've been replaying the fight in my head, and every time it's like, less clear. And Brandon asks Walter, well, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? And Walter's like, well, he kind of dodges the question.
He's like, I don't have an answer for you at that point, I guess, at some point.
But then he does say, well, because of your decision, we're still here, and nothing can change that.
Yeah, I think he actually compliments him. You're actually braver than me.
Yeah. So what did you make of Walter with Brandon first?
Okay.
And the way these two, the way Walter, kind of, try to mentor, maybe just kind of persuade a little bit. Brandon?
So here's the thing. I have a love-hate relationship with Walter. Because he's a really fantastic character in the sense he could be a superb mentor. Because he very much is the voice of reason in this mad world that is Sheldon's planet.
He's the realist, so yeah.
He's very much that voice of reason. And, I mean,
he's the pragmatist.
Maybe pragmatist, yes, but I think also to the point of cynicism. To where he seems very cynical. And I think he's gotten even more cynical in his older age.
Right.
He really got on my nerves in the 20s. It's like, it's odd to say that. It's like, oh, when he was back in the 40s, he was cool. But in the 20s, he was a tool.
Yeah.
But no.
You're cooler now than you were in the 20s, man.
Exactly. When the 60s broke out, you were.
No, the previous 20s.
That's right. I actually think there wasn't there a moment where there was that moment like, what's wrong with you, man? I thought you were cool. I think that actually came out at one point. But between Sheldon and
you
Walter,
used to be cool, man. You used to be cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, he is the pragmatist. He is the realist. And I think he would be the ideal mentor for Brandon. You do wonder, though, whether there is a hidden agenda. I guess maybe through comic book reading and superhero movie watching, superhero TV watching, you always wonder whether these folks are like, come with me, and this kind of thing. It's almost like you wonder where there's a hidden agenda because you want you really want to hope, please don't be a bad guy or don't be a creepy bad guy.
Here's the question now. Do you think Walter has a hidden agenda?
I don't know why, but look, I mean, this is a crazy theory. I wonder whether he actually knows where Sky Fox is and is actually working with Sky Fox.
Ooh.
I don't know.
Is that one of your pet theories?
It's one of my, it's right. It's exactly. It's my Kornacki board moment.
There you go. Yes. All right. So let's go back to Nick Kornacki at the board, with his murder board. Connecting the dots. And
I don't know why, because there seems something. I don't know why. I kind of my sense is tingling. There's more to this man than meets the eye. I could be completely wrong, but I don't know why. I have
Spider Nick's sense tingling.
That's right. I don't know why. It might be the big reveal that he is actually in contact with Sky Fox and actually knows what is happening.
Yeah.
It's odd. It's very strange. I mean, and as I said, and I'm praying literally that he is not a bad guy and his intentions are not bad, and that he doesn't want to kind of bring Brandon over to the dark side or do something terrible to him.
Yeah.
Because he does constantly he wants to reassure him, but there's something, but almost bring him closer to him at the same time. It's an interesting dynamic, and once again, I really have to compliment the actors in this show. They are fabulous. They really, really, the writing's very good, and I think the actors are really, really selling it.
Yeah, I think the casting was pretty solid in this one.
Very much so.
The first time it came out, when they first announced the cast, a couple years ago, I wasn't sure if they could pull this off, having read the comics, but I'm sold. I think they can. They think they've done a great job with the characters, and that's it's good writing, like you said, good acting, and it's paying off.
Yeah, and I hope they will continue to pursue this relationship between Brandon and Walter, because it seems like the only kind of stable thing in Brandon's life right now, outside of this girlfriend who Grace does not seem to be a particular fan of. He almost sees her as like, who is this hussy with my son, kind of thing. She's like, oh, you're here, kind of thing. It's like, what's this, yeah, exactly. Talking to my son.
Well, here's hoping Uncle Walt doesn't, betray everybody's trust. So we'll see.
That's why.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I hope I'm wrong.
Well, we'll see. Well, hopefully you're right. I mean, hopefully you're wrong. Whoops. All right. So Barnabas Wolfe shows up.
Oh, yes.
And in a very flamboyant entrance, very eccentric.
There's your narcissist. That's the narcissist, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, exactly. So Barnabas Wolfe alludes to the idea. Apparently he's like an ally of the Union. I don't think he's in the Union, but he seems to be someone who they know. So they're bringing him.
Consultant.
He's a consultant. That's a great term for this. Yes. So they bring him in to look at the corpse, and apparently he alludes to the idea that he and Grace, I guess. No, I'm sorry. That they bring him to the autopsy room where Fitz and Petra are, and Fitz explains that the clone has identical armor to Black Star, and that it's fused with the underlying tissue.
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting. It's like it's connected.
So it's literally like attached to his skin.
Yeah, exactly. It's bonded. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So there's no way to get the armor off without peeling his skin off. Mm-hmm. And Barnabas is like, "Oh, is that only the problem?" So Barnabas uses his power to slowly separate the armor. So it's like ripping the Band-Aid off slowly instead of just ripping it off. And so it looks very painful, even though the guy is dead. There's no reason it should be.
Yeah, I mean, notice how the camera lingers on the armor,
the gruesome,
and the pieces of skin.
Yeah, the gruesome elements, right? Really tries to make you feel that a little bit. Yeah. Even though, like I said, the guy's dead, so it doesn't matter. It's just a body. So this allows Fitz and Petra to continue with the autopsy. And while they're trying to remove the liver, Fitz realizes there's something else inside the body. Mm-hmm. A puzzle ball of sorts. So Barnabas examines it, and when he, does his little, Rubik's Cube, manipulation.
He's there doing his jiggery pokery.
Jiggery pokery, great word. And he unlocks the puzzle box, and out pops a puzzle ball, excuse me. And he unlocks he brings out a pocket watch. Now, where have we seen that pocket watch before? It's just the one that belonged to Sheldon and Walter's father.
That's right.
So, obviously someone is sending a message.
Exactly. And there you're like, the plot thickens because evidently whoever this is knows these people very well and very intimately.
Right. So, what did you make of that?
Well, here's the curious thing, because I'm not sure whether it's actually Walter who says, this seems like the doings of Skyfox or of George, because he always loved a puzzle. Yeah. Not to mention that obviously at this point they are at odds, and he is literally a villain at this point, and nobody knows where Skyfox is, which of course then sends Sheldon off on the hunt for Skyfox and everything we mentioned earlier. So, I mean, I was blown away. I was like, wow, I really like this. This is a nice reveal, when you went after Barnes has done his...
And it makes sense because Skyfox, we know, George was really good at puzzles. He was the one that figured out what Sheldon was trying to do back in the 1929 with, scribbling all those circles around and all that. He pieced those together. So
it confirms what you were saying about him being the Batman analog.
Right.
Because like the world's greatest detective, just like Batman is.
Yeah.
That's literally George's thing.
That's his superpower almost, right?
Yeah.
His superpower is to be Batman in that regard.
Exactly. No, but I mean, I like the fact that said that you immediately get, it could be Skyfox. I mean, I'm trying to recall whether it's Walter who comes out with that theory, because as I said, it could play into the grander scheme of things of Walter's trying to throw people off the scent if he does have more to do with it.
Okay, so if he does. So that was my next question, but I think you kind of answered it already. That you kind of feel that if Walter is up to no good, like you're being concerned about, do you think he was trying to put the blame on Skyfox?
That's why I think, because if we want to feed that theory, it's maybe he's trying to throw them off the scent, saying, obviously, I can use Skyfox as a scapegoat because he is a villain. So obviously, why would they mistrust dear Uncle Walter? Of course, they're going to go after somebody who they know is a known felon and a known villain.
Right.
So on one hand, it could be that, because obviously, Walter himself knows all about the pocket watch and was there on the voyage, which we will discuss, and knows all the intricacies about the watch.
Well, the fact that they were in the Union together for all those years. And, there's that big gap of 90 years between 1929 and the present day.
Exactly.
So that watch could have ended up any kind of way, between, from the 1929 to the present day, anything could have happened between now and then.
It's like the watch in Pulp Fiction.
Right.
Butcher's watch.
Butcher's watch.
Father's watch.
Yes. Well, we won't talk about where that watch might have been placed.
Yes, exactly. That watch has seen some interesting places.
Especially if Christopher Walken is involved.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. Okay.
Yes. But but that aside, it does pose quite the puzzler. And at this point, I am so hungering for Skyfox to actually show up because, one, I really enjoyed the actor in the 20s. Secondly, I really want to see what George is like these days. And I hope I'm assuming Sheldon will eventually find him.
Right.
But and of course everybody's like, what's George trying to say with this watch? What's the message he's trying to? And everybody now is trying to see if there's a riddle, if you will, that Skyfox in inverted commas has sent them.
Yeah, exactly. But I agree with you. I love the fact that they're building up. They're trying to make you anticipate and want to see Sky Fox. They're building him up
Oh yes.
for his return because you know it's coming. The question is when. And in the meantime, though, what was your reaction to Barnabas Wolfe? This is a character I think we probably will see again at some point. So what did you make of his introduction?
I am a magic geek, big time. So, I mean, obviously, big fan of the Harry Potter franchise, big fan of any magical characters we have in comics, big Constantine fan like yourself. So he reminded me a little bit of the wizard from Stargirl,
okay,
if you will. Because without the southern accent, he's the British version of the wizard almost.
All right.
Because he has that kind of flamboyancy. You can tell that there is maybe some animosity because he maybe was vying.
The wizard or the gambler?
The gambler, pardon me. The gambler.
That's right. That's what I was trying to figure out who you're thinking.
No, exactly. I got my wires crossed there.
That's okay. That's all right. I just wanted to clarify. Yeah.
It's probably been way too long since I've seen Stargirl.
Time to watch Stargirl again. New season coming up.
Exactly.
Time for a rewatch.
Exactly. So yeah, I wonder whether there was some animosity because he seems to be vying for Grace's affections as well as an ambulance passes by.
All right. Must be Sky Fox. No.
Exactly. But no, because he kind of does kind of flirt with her a little bit. He's like, "Oh, I don't like that color," and he puts her in red. And Grace is like, you be thankful I like this color because apparently she sees him. He's a little bit slimy. He's a little bit oily.
Well, he's a little touchy-feely, and he's kind of hinting, hey, we might have hooked up if Sheldon hadn't got to you first.
Yeah, and you could have called me daddy.
Yeah, but I would think that if someone changed my dress without my permission, if I was Grace,
right,
that. I'd be pretty perturbed by that. Look, so, you're doing this against my will. It's like, no.
Yes.
And he's kind of acting like, well, if I could do whatever I want with you, almost like you're my toy.
Yeah, I think that's, which once again feeds, I think, into his narcissism about how, he is his biggest fan. He's his own biggest fan.
Right.
And I think the idea is that, as I said, Grace keeps it together very much so. She doesn't seem to kind of yell at him. That's why she makes the comment of, I don't know what's going on today. I don't know. There's another one.
Maybe we should check the news. No.
No, hopefully everything's okay. So I think that's the thing because she
stay safe, Milan. Stay safe.
I'm sure everything's fine, but because we'd seen Grace in the 20s and she was quite the potty mouth. Here she seems to keep it together.
Her personally, but yeah, my kind of girl.
That's why I love Deb in Dexter for that exact reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, and here she keeps it very much together. She's like, "You're lucky I like red." So yeah, he is, as I said, very much the slime ball, the little bit of the oily guy, but he is so fun to watch. He really is. I mean, since you're disgusted by him, but you can't help watching him.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I love.
He obviously knows how to make his presence known, and he's also very interesting to watch. I agree.
Yeah. I kind of wanted more of him because I thought that the actor just did so well with the part, and just the different vibe he brought to the whole thing, because he is so dismissive of non-powered people. And we see this obviously with the medical staff where he's happily doing all this stuff. And he's like, oh, you poor little humans can't get it through your tiny little skulls of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you were a human being once yourself, dude. It's like you weren't born with these powers. I don't know, unless he was, but I don't know. Could be wrong.
Yeah,
but,
the kind of vibe I get from him, he's almost like, I know you don't watch Star Trek, but Q from Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. So this very powerful being who sees himself as above mere humans. Very arrogant, very self-absorbed, and unfortunately, like I said, very powerful. So, which is the worst combination?
Oh, of course. And it seems like Barnabas is. is just as powerful. It seems like Barnabas is just as powerful. Because if he can, like, open up a wall the way he did when he came through and gave a hint of what he can do, the guy potentially could be quite the menace.
Yeah, he could. He could. So
yeah,
we'll see if that happens. But
in the comics, Charles, does he get quite a bit to do, or Barnabas is a background character?
He does get quite a bit to do. So I get the feeling if we should see him again. Now, if we don't see him in the next couple episodes, we should see him in a season 2 if the show gets renewed. So we'll see.
Okay.
I guess we'll find out.
He plays quite the role then. Okay.
He should. We'll see. Okay. But I get, I'm hoping that they just didn't introduce him to say, oh, hey, we got him in there.
Yes, like our comic book fans, we did look what we did for you. Shiny new object there for you to look at.
Yeah. So
I mean, were you reading the comics? Were you happy with this portrayal?
Oh yeah, I thought it was pretty dead on. I'm just curious to see where they're going to go with it because this introduction, like I said in my trivia section, is very different from the comics. So
right.
So we'll see. All right. Final topic, finally, for this first episode. The Union starts uniting.
Aha.
So we go back, way back to 1929, where the Union starts coming together a little bit as we finally get moving forward toward the island. We start.
Yep.
It's 1929, so Jane's trying to have a conversation with Sheldon about their upcoming wedding, but he's a little busy because he's still having visions, including the farmer reciting those coordinates.
Wow.
And Jane tries to talk with him, but he keeps getting drawn in further and further, and ultimately, Sheldon goes out looking for George to tell him that, well, you were right all along about the farmhouse and the map. And they start sharing everything that they saw there, think it was all part of a puzzle or a test. And Sheldon, is convinced, like, this is going to lead to something that's going to change the world. Because, remember, he's a utopian idealist. So whatever this is my vision, whatever, we got to do this because, it's something that's going to revolutionize the world.
I don't know what it is, but it's going to change the
exactly.
world.
Just trust me. It's going to be big. It's indoor plumbing. It's going to be big.
Big. Yeah.
So, so they started, with George, they kind of, they arrive at the United Front newspaper, which I thought was a very interesting name for this newspaper because it kind of sounds like the Union, right?
Exactly.
So I wonder if that's where they're going to go with. So they meet up with Grace. But Grace, as it turns out, is in the process of being fired.
Yes.
And she's like, well, it's because, I'm a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And she thinks Sheldon's there to sue her, but Sheldon pitches her this opportunity. So essentially we have George and Sheldon going around recruiting people, starting with Grace.
Yeah.
And it has to be specific people according to Sheldon's vision.
And George is key to this because Sheldon, let's say, is not exactly the PR guy, or rather, he doesn't make for a good salesman. And it seems like George almost corrects his route every time Sheldon opens his mouth.
Right.
So I think for the most part, if we do assemble our team, for the most part, I think George plays. I'm not saying 90%, but 80% of the work is done by his excellent salesmanship. And just the way he's able to talk to folks. Because Sheldon is very candid and very open about it all. George kind of, is like, don't reveal too much, make it tasty, but don't give away everything. So, and they work so well together. It was just such a fun, they were like the odd couple on, going off to do stuff.
Well, it seemed very odd, like you said, it's like an odd couple relationship where George is the calm, rational one who, like you said, knows how to sell this. Sheldon is this crazed dreamer and who, we're not entirely sure, like he knows what he's talking about, right? So,
Yeah.
but it almost, to me, it almost feels like if Sheldon hadn't gone to George, this whole thing never would have happened.
Oh no,
He had to start with George first because George helped convince the others to come on board.
And not to mention, George was the only one who believed him.
Right.
Which really strengthens, I think, shows you how deep, as I mentioned earlier, their bond runs.
Right.
Because when everybody else was saying, you're totally off your nuts, you're totally crazy, pay no heed to my mad brother.
Yeah.
George is the only one who will literally listen to him, as we'd seen in the previous episodes as well, where he's literally, as Walt put it, literally feeding into his fantasies. Yeah. But it's because George says there must be something to this. And George is key to this. Like you said, it would have been a complete failure because how are you going to sell something going into a saying, I had a vision, wanna come?
Yeah. Well, you just made me think of something.
Yeah.
Do you think that George would have been a better brother to Sheldon than Walter?
Ouch. That's a very good question, but I think maybe because it seems like Sheldon is literally grown closer to George than he has his own brother.
Yeah.
They really seem to have drifted apart quite a bit. I mean, I'm sure there's still that brotherly love between the two of them, but I think maybe Sheldon tends to, he might have made for a better brother, I suppose, because we'd seen him as very foppish and kind of very sort of self-centered at first.
Yeah.
But he really knows how to read people, and he does care. It does show you that the man does have a heart.
Yeah.
Just
underneath all that Playboy facade.
Yeah.
That there is something under there. So it's very interesting that guy became the villain.
Very true, but isn't it many times the cases where you have like the best friends that grow up and then they end up becoming villains? I mean, it has happened before, not so often, but it has happened before.
Yeah, right.
But it's and that's what makes you even more curious is what caused this rift.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of folks are waiting for that to be revealed. Hopefully, it will get revealed in the show of where was that heel turn moment,
right?
Where Sky Fox decided to go over to the other side. Going back to Grace, as I said, she's quite the potty mouth.
Like I said, that's why I like her. But so Grace is recruited by Sheldon and George.
Yep.
Then they go looking for Fitz.
Mm-hmm.
So they go, they meet up with Willie and his son Fitz. They return home after struggling to look for work. And obviously things were a little awkward after what happened with the mill.
Yeah. So
it's amazing that they were even let inside their home to sit down to talk.
Well, I mean, because I guess it was his wife that let them in because the Fitz and his father they come home. Right. And they're sitting at the table having coffee. And like, what the hell are these people doing in our house?
Yeah.
Because they kind of blame Sheldon by association for having kind of sent them home or fired them or had let them go, I guess we could say.
Yeah, right.
Because the fact that the mill was going under and also the embezzlement. And that's why I think it's almost guilt by association because it was Sheldon's father, not Sheldon who was doing the embezzlement. But right. They hold him accountable as well for that.
Well, he's just a big reminder, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, look, we still don't have the money that you keep promising that we were going to get.
Yes.
So
and you laid us off. And
you laid us off, and so how can we trust you? So Sheldon has to try to convince Fitz, but Fitz isn't having it. Fitz has no desire, so they kind of send them packing. And it's only when Fitz's dad, Willie, gets a hold of him and says, look, you've got an opportunity here. You should go for it. How often do you get to go, to the other side of the world?
Yeah, and not to mention, he's like, oh, he's really a horrible man, isn't he? He's offering you a job. What a terrible person.
Right. So, and it's interesting because, Sheldon and George are sitting there in the car outside trying to figure out their next move. Like, well, we need Fitz.
Yeah.
And we have no idea how that's going to happen because as far as they're concerned, that's done. It's not happening.
Yeah,
So they're trying to figure out what to do because they need everybody according to Sheldon's vision. So Fitz finally comes out and he tells them, "Okay, I'm in."
But I want to be paid up front.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I don't know if you ever saw that Rick and Morty episode. You son of a bitch, I'm in.
Yes.
Where they do the Ocean's 11 parody.
Yeah, when they're assembling the team, for the heist kind of thing,
So that's that's what it kind of reminded me of a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I have to say, Fitz is a very good negotiator because he's like, okay, I'm in, but I want to be paid up front.
Right.
And I wonder I'm assuming that it's probably George who's the guy who has the money because I don't know
remember, he doesn't have money at this point, right? He's broke.
So I'm assuming that the whole thing is funded literally by Sheldon.
It has to be.
I assume.
Or no, I take that back. It's probably Walter. Walter's probably the one with money, right?
So he's the most reluctant of them all. And
Walter's probably the bank on this.
Yeah, he's almost the most reluctant of them all.
Yeah.
And he's financing the operation.
Right. So that's what's going on, and they go back. Walter's there. They go back to Walter's house, try to talk to him for Sheldon. George does, and Walter's still like, Sheldon's sick, and you're just feeding his delusions, yada yada. We've heard this before, but George says, look, all Sheldon is trying to do is to get better, and maybe playing along and getting on the ship will be the thing that Sheldon needs to do just that. And maybe you need it too.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that was a very good moment. And then this is where we go back to Jane's house, and Sheldon's packing up their stuff, getting ready for this trip. He's like, George got Walter to get on the trip. So Walter's in. And Jane's worried that, look, okay, I'm kind of having second thoughts about this.
Because she poses the question, was I in your vision?
Right. And that was...
And he's look at
the time. Gotta go, honey. Bye. So, yeah, that's a great point. So it's at that point she realizes that she has no future with Sheldon. So she leaves her engagement ring on the bed, tips out the door. See ya. That's
her done, I guess, because So
but this is apparently a final sacrifice that Sheldon had to make before this voyage.
Yeah, because eventually he does come out and tell her that she wasn't in the vision, but it's what I thought was curious is how invested everybody is in this vision, especially Jane, who thinks he's crazy, but still mad, yet she feels this vision holds so much weight to the point to where if I'm not in his vision, it means he doesn't love me anymore and I've got to leave.
Yeah. All right. I know there was a lot we unpacked there. So
yes,
a lot longer than I thought. I was worried about this one, but I knew there was a lot of things we had to cover. So apologies. So what's your rating for this one?
I'm going to give this 8 out of 10 hidden watches.
Okay, that's good. Well, then I'm going to give this one. I actually like this a little bit more. I like this 8.5. I'll go with fancy walking canes.
Nice.
All right. I was going to go with pocket watches pulled from a Black Star clone, but I had a feeling you might go with pocket watches, so I had a backup.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. The next episode, Cover Her Face, the 6th episode of Jupiter's Legacy. Mm-hmm. This one only has 3 topics, so hopefully we'll get through this a little quicker. Topic number 1, let's talk about Grace, Chloe, and Hutch. So Grace, we find out that she and Hutch are about to, I guess Chloe and Hutch are about to have their own intimate moment, but Hutch is like, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So Chloe, she's kind of like waiting for Hutch, and realizes her mother's outside the window checking on her because she's not answering her phone.
Yeah, and then she'd heard from Jana that she'd been in hospital.
Yeah, exactly. You bring up a good point because, remember, nobody had called Grace or anybody in the family, Sheldon or anybody, to let them know that Chloe was in the hospital. So, but because Jana told Grace decides, well, I need to check on my daughter, understandably, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because Jana's like, is Chloe doing okay? Is she still in hospital? And Grace's like, wait, what?
Yeah. But apparently finds out that, they're no longer in the hospital. So she swings by her place. And they have a little conversation. Yeah, Grace wants to know why Chloe didn't tell her she was in the hospital. And she asks if it had something to do with Hutch. So she does know, I think.
Yes.
That they're seeing each other.
Or at least she has an inkling that there's something going on, yeah.
Because she reminds Chloe, well, you know who he is, who he's the son of. And Chloe shoots back, well, Hutch isn't like his father, just like I'm not my father.
Yes, exactly.
And Grace says, well, you're an adult. You can make your own choices. She tries to go farther, but Chloe's like, I know you're going to just give me a lecture.
Yeah, the fact is, this reflects on the whole family, and what you do reflects on the entire family, yeah.
Right. So essentially, Chloe asked her mom if you ever had any thoughts about, your own instead of just constantly siding with Dad.
Mm.
And, which is exactly the same thing Sheldon said to Chloe, or, as Chloe said to Sheldon, the last time they spoke. So she kind of poses that on her mom this time. And Grace doesn't have a comeback for that one. And it's just at that point where Fitz is about to come back into the room. So what did you make of that encounter?
Well, I think it's the prelude to the little journey that Grace goes on in this episode where her faith in the code is shaken, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I think that it will probably also, she'll probably have to re-examine everything that she believes once, this episode comes to a close and what ensues in that. Because I suppose it might be just a case of, kind of stand by your man, if you will, to use a Tammy Wynette reference.
Right.
That's how it.
Or a Blues Brothers reference. I'll just put that out there.
Yeah, exactly. Depending, I suppose.
Stand
which
by your man.
That's right. Whether you're a fan of the Jake and Elwood version or the Tammy Wynette version, that's it's up to you, folks. Yep. But I think that's what she's doing. But unlike Sheldon, she's very much, I think, a little bit more understanding, if you will, or rather, is not as much of a ball buster as her husband is. Because that Sheldon would have come into the room,
right?
Literally given her hell for the rest of the episode, and probably Hutch would have come out and yada yada yada. At some point, she's like, "Okay, I get it. I'm going to get out of your hair and just remember that what you do reflects on the family. See ya." And so off she goes. So I think Grace is a little bit more understanding of her kids, and she had made that point previously to Sheldon. So I think she's being more of a parent, of a decent parent, if you will, compared to Sheldon. But and as we see, as I said, later on in the episode, her faith in everything that she stood by makes her re-examine everything. So she might end up thinking maybe Chloe is not so wrong after all.
Well, and I also think that, maybe Chloe, I kind of wonder about this, if maybe Chloe thinks her mom is too passive so that it, she's not confrontational enough. Yeah. So if I just kind of let her go a bit and, that's it, she'll back off. I won't have to listen to it too long because not like, dealing with her father that, she instantly, if she's confronted with her father, her walls go up.
Right.
So with her mother, I think it's more like, well, I'll just let mom spew her BS a little bit, and then she'll be gone. And
Yeah,
and
she
I can
probably
get back
knows
to
how
Hutch.
to play. She probably knows how to play her parents at this point, or how to, kind of deal with them.
That's the vibe I got anyway with that.
Mm-hmm. No, very well put. I agree.
All right. Anything else about these characters in that conversation? All right.
No, I think we're good.
Okay. So let's move on. Topic number 2. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This is more the main thing going on in 2021. So Grace Ghostbeam, a.k.a. Jana,
Yep.
and Baryon, where, for being such a passive character in the modern storyline, Grace makes a very interesting choices in this episode. Like her actions. We get to see a very different side of Grace, or maybe I should say that maybe what we've been seeing up till now is starting to crack, and Grace is looking at things a little differently now, especially after what happened with Brandon and the way Sheldon has reacted to him and a bunch of other factors that, like with Chloe accusing her of siding with her father all the time and just a lot of other things. So I want to get your thoughts on what we find, what we see in this episode is that, Ghostbeam, Jana, the one that kind of wants to be, join the union, pretty much a goody two-shoes as far as Chloe's concerned, but someone who I think Grace likes because Ghostbeam is kind of like the daughter she didn't have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something horrible happens to Ghostbeam. Baryon kills her, and it triggers a whole new side of Grace that we haven't seen up till now. So what did you make of that?
Well, as I had mentioned previously, I think her faith is seriously shaken, especially when it comes to her belief in holding to the code and what have you. Because earlier in the episode, she had shown up breaking up a moment where one of the other heroes was going to kill one of the other villains.
Yeah.
And she's like, that is not how we do things. And she kind of literally gave them the talk, if you will, saying you don't do that. That is not the way the union acts. And she flies off again. Later on, of course, we find out that Baryon, who I believe is a follower of Black Star, at least that is what the cops were telling Grace, or that's the way he's depicted. So one of his followers, kind of escaped into this building and
so there's a connection there.
That's what apparently is mentioned. I mean, I don't know how much the cops know, but they said apparently he was one of Black Star's followers. But
maybe that's important to the overall mystery of Black Star.
So I think that's why it made me think about this. The Black Star has followers, but that said, yeah, because she then arrives. Of course, Ghostbeam is dying, and with her last breath, she literally tells Grace, "I did not break the code. I didn't kill him."
Yeah.
And I think that's the moment where literally Grace loses it. Because, if this is what the code is going to cost us, to where you're in a life-threatening situation and you'll let yourself be killed because you refuse to kill.
Yes.
She's not having any more of that, especially after you're basically seeing this young girl die. So obviously she's on the warpath. Everything else. And I was actually trying to figure this out, Charles.
So it's almost like, she lost her protege.
That's right.
But like I said, I think it's also because she lost for lack of a better word, daughter. I'm putting that in quotes.
It's like a surrogate daughter.
A surrogate daughter, yeah. Because the daughter I wanted, but didn't get. So Grace is obviously taking Ghostbeam's death very personally right now.
I actually was wondering this because after that we have the fight with Baryon, and basically we see her literally punch him to death. But here's the thing: she then walks out of the building and tells the cops that he's still alive.
Yeah.
So is he still alive, or did she actually kill him, and is she kind of sort of lying to the cops?
I think, well, there's a body in there. If they have to claim the body and he is dead, that's going to cause, I don't think the cops are going to have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for her own self, she caught herself at the last moment.
Because we saw that then, of course, her costume is stained with blood,
right?
And of course, the camera itself almost seems like it's as if us watching and we get spurted with blood in the face.
Yeah. They make a big deal when she goes back to her home and tries to clean up and clean the blood off and whatnot, wiping her hands. So she's washing her hands of the blood.
Yeah, she literally heads into the tub, discards the dirty blood-stained costume, jumps into the shower, and it's literally a cleansing thing. She's just trying to clean herself of what she's done.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Sheldon arrives, and she obviously does not tell him what happened. She only says that Ghost Beam died, but she doesn't go into any further detail.
Yeah. But I think, maybe she caught herself at the last moment. Like she was about to kill him, but didn't.
Mm. So she could have given him that killing blow, but she didn't.
Because I think the cops would have been okay with it if she had.
Mm.
So if he was dead, why didn't she say it? Why didn't she say that?
That's why that was why I say it would kind of contrast with what she tells the cops before she leaves.
Yeah. See, I don't think she was lying to the cops, or saying he's alive and then they go in there and they find a dead body. I think if he was dead, she would have said, "Yeah, he's dead. He's not a threat anymore."
Yeah. Well, she probably beat him half to death, but she left him. She knew that he would probably recover. Or in the sense that he needs the medical attention. If not, he will die.
Right.
But
right.
But she didn't literally kill him.
Yeah. So she didn't take that final step yet.
No, in fact, she didn't give him that finishing move, if you will, that finishing punch.
Finish him.
That's right. Grace wins fatality.
Grace wins. Nice. But yeah, it was just such a. I mean, credit to Leslie Bibb, the actress who plays Grace. Phenomenal job in this episode. I just thought it was very blown away by her performance here, especially just when she unleashes after playing such a we got to see her later in the 1929 setting, but where she's kind of almost playing a different version as well. That kind of cocky. 1929 version of Lois Lane.
Yes, but with a lot more profanity.
Exactly. Well, it's Netflix. You get away with that. But she, but and then in the present, she's very, like I said, very calm and demure, passive, very stoic. But here she just unleashes, and it's just such a stark contrast, and I was very impressed by the range there.
Oh, you and me both. I think it was almost like pent-up anger and frustration, because maybe she's been confronted in other situations. She's been a superhero for a long, long time.
Yeah, she has.
So you think to yourself, how many times has she had that temptation, in inverted commas, of literally killing these horrible people, but has always held back? And it's almost that... You continue to hold back, you get to the point where you literally, like a pressure cooker, you explode.
Yeah, and that's probably what happened here is because, she's tried to get Sheldon to listen to reason about Brandon. That's not working. She's tried to connect with Chloe. That's not working either. And now her protege has died.
So let's say wasn't a good day at the beach for Grace.
No, not at all. So... It's just all these factors, everything building up, like you said, like a pressure cooker, and now here we are. And it's going to be very interesting to see where Grace goes forward, I think.
Very much so, and whether this will put a further strain on the relationship with Sheldon.
Yeah, because, she's trying to, now she has a secret. Like, she lost it with Barry on. Didn't kill him, as far as we know, but almost did. So, one, what's going to happen if Sheldon finds out what Grace did? And two, what's going to happen when Sheldon finds out that Grace kept a secret?
And also, I think the reputation that she has as like the matriarch of the superheroes,
right?
Because it almost paints her as a little bit of a hypocrite at this point. Because the younger superheroes like, oh, you tell us not to kill and not to do the uber violent stuff, and what do you do? So she'll either become a pariah because of that, or the younger superheroes like, you go, girl, you know, that's how you do it.
Or you like, this could create a schism between Sheldon and Grace that could divide them.
You almost have like the two factions. That's
well, it's almost like
community.
It's the Jupiter's Legacy Civil War, where Grace will be on one side and Sheldon will be on his side and he'll be the only one on his side because everybody else is on Grace's side.
I can so imagine the team-ups. Right. And Sheldon looks to his right and his left and you hear crickets.
Yeah.
He's like, who's with me? Creak, 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 creak.
Well, like, you like, okay, here's Grace's side. And, like lines of superheroes. Then you cut over to Sheldon's side. And it's just Sheldon right there.
Yeah, and they said crickets
like,
in the background.
Looking around like, where's everybody at?
And the ball of hay moves by, or you hear Wolf howling in the background.
Right. So, yeah, pretty much. All right. But, I can't wait to see where Grace goes with her. All right. Third and final topic. 1929. So, we had the Union start uniting in the previous episode. Well, the Union finally unites. The Union is united here in this sixth episode, where at the very end of the episode, the last remaining person that Sheldon said had to be there before they reach the island arrives. And, we get taken all the way, we go through the whole journey. And like I said, it's almost like a
nautical adventure.
A sea adventure movie. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I was hoping they'd have the typical guy with like the Irish accent going, "Arr, there's the foul weather abroad." Yeah.
Well, that's more of a pirate accent, but okay.
Yeah, but it's kind of Irish, if you will. Probably it was taken from the Irish.
Oh, was it? Because all right, I'll take your as the Irishman, or at least of Irish descent.
Yeah.
I
was hoping there'd be him or a Scottish chap or something, or somebody British who's like. Right. We're coming across the port of Morocco, or something like that.
Yeah. So in 1929, Sheldon and his crew try to secure a ship to go to these coordinates. Okay, so they hook up with this guy, Captain Borges, and he initially refuses them because like boats in that area haven't find themselves at the bottom of the Atlantic. So it's kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. Almost.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, okay, they offer money. Well, that's not enough. And George is like, okay, Sheldon, we're going to have to find another guy. But Sheldon says, of course, is insistent, it has to be him. If we're going to find the island, he was in the vision, got to be him. So Sheldon in his head has this imaginary set of this checklist, and everything has to be checked for this to work.
OCD much?
A little bit. So if like one component isn't in this vision, or from the vision isn't checked, it's all for nothing.
Yeah.
But somehow this is through Sheldon's tenacity. He's hoping that this will happen. So they figure out a way. Walter offers some money on top of that. Yeah. It's like more money. Okay, what's going to make you do this? More money. Okay. So they get the ship.
He just plonks down these notes.
Yeah, it's like so problem solved. And they get on the boat. Sheldon, Grace is suspicious of Sheldon because he keeps arguing with himself. And every time she tries to learn more, George pops up out of nowhere. Says, no, it's no big deal. He's just working things out. Just let him go. Trust me. It's fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
As Sheldon's kind of yelling at himself in his cabin.
Right. So this keeps going on. There's a little, we see this growing frustration with everything where, Grace is concerned about Sheldon. She goes to Walter. Walter's trying, they try to figure out what's going on. Walter's, look, Sheldon's okay, but Grace isn't convinced, okay? She's not letting this go. And Sheldon and his crew are arguing because with the captain later on, the pump stops working. Mm-hmm. And the ship starts taking on water. And the engineer, turns out, stayed back on land because the engineer didn't want to die.
Yeah, apparently half the crew didn't come.
Yeah. So thanks for that, right? So Fitz, thankfully, pitches in, tries to help out. And we find out that apparently Fitz has some engineering skills.
And, of course, he is initially confronted with racism.
Yeah, of course, because, remember, it's 1929, okay?
Yeah.
But he does stand up for himself. And in the process, kind of gets the respect of a couple of other guys.
Yes. And, in fact, one of the other ship hands actually says to him, you should work with us. You're good.
Yeah, we like you.
And
you stood up to this asshole.
We do get that kind of...
He was in charge.
Yeah, exactly. This racist, bigoted guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's because I think we do always get that moment of social commentary. We had it with Grace on how women are perceived, and sadly to this day it still happens, folks. Just like unfortunately with Fitz's case, this stuff still does happen, where people are just as racist and awful and bigoted. And but he's offered a job, which I think was kind of nice. Like, you don't look for a job in America. You should work on the ship with us.
Yeah, well, it was nice. These guys reached out, so Fitz kind of felt, accepted, which was great.
Exactly. It's definitely a validating moment for him.
Yeah, it was. And so they get the pump running, so everything's back on track, okay? So that problem was solved. And Fitz talks a little bit with Grace, kind of finds a little bit of a friendship there. Grace seems pretty, especially given it's 1929, seems comfortable at least talking with Fitz. It doesn't have a problem with it. Grace ends up sneaking into Sheldon's room, finding his scribbles and a drawing of his father.
And whoever drew that, I'm assuming it's probably one of the comic book the artists who actually worked on the show.
I didn't recognize the artwork, but
it's really, I mean, the portrait of his father is really, really good. I actually really liked it.
I have to study that closely, but I don't think it was anybody associated with the comics, unless maybe it was one of the art directors or something on the show, but I don't know. It's a good question. So Sheldon and Walter show up, of course, at that awkward moment, accuse her of snooping. Walter sees the images, though, that he hasn't seen before, and their father's pocket watch. The watch again.
Oh, yes, because we should also remind folks that Sheldon did do a little bit of grave robbing earlier with the pocket watch.
Yes, yeah, we kind of forgot about that, didn't we? Yeah.
So he's like, his father's
so he's like, wait, we buried that with Dad. How do you have it? And Sheldon's like, things happen. But
yeah, I just
so they get into a fight, and that gets broken up by crew members and rushing back because George tells them something's going on deck.
Yep.
So they all rush up, and they find the crew pulling somebody out of the water. Sheldon realizes this is the final person they've been waiting for.
Yeah, because in his vision he said there was a complete stranger who he'd never ever seen in his life, and he's like, that's the guy.
Yeah, he's like,
this is the guy.
Everyone is finally here. So So as far as Sheldon is concerned, all systems go, all the boxes are checked. We're good, right? And the crew is, of course, asking, like, okay, so how did you end up in the water? And this guy introduces himself as Dr. Richard Conrad, who is someone we will find out more later, obviously, because he's with, everybody else, right? And he says he was a volunteer on a mission for the Red Cross. Says that the ship was hit by a storm, and as he shares the story, Sheldon realizes, hey, that story is similar to the one the farmer told me.
Yeah, because we then get that back and forth of the conversation he had with Old Man Miller.
Right.
And I keep, that whenever I think of Old Man Miller, I keep thinking of Old Man Miller, that old.
Yeah, that's a little uncomfortable, but yeah.
I know, but what can I do? I can't help it.
I know. So the ship enters the worst of the storm. They get through the worst of it. Okay. They there's all this tension and everything to build up through this entire episode at this point. And Sheldon, with all this, starts to unravel more and more as they get closer to whatever.
Yeah.
He gets on the top deck and he threatens, like, look, because they're threatening to turn the ship around because the storm is so bad.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, I'm going to shoot this guy, this helmsman, if you try to turn the ship around.
Yeah, and he's like, we're all going to die if we turn back.
Right, exactly. So it's this big standoff, right? It's like, we must turn back. The storm is too bad. We're all going to die. And Sheldon's like, but my vision.
I love the way he does it.
Right?
My vision, but candy.
But isn't that essentially it, though?
Yes, it is. So well put, Charles. So well put.
That's basically what it boils down to, I think, that he's asking everybody, like, look, okay, certain death, okay, fine, but the vision, guys, stay on focus, stay on, keep your eye on the ball, okay?
Exactly, yeah. It's great, for sure, yeah.
So...
And then, we have these people yelling and screaming at each other through this storm, almost inaudibly, because it's like the storm is raging, and
it's almost like a very old movie, which makes sense because it's set in 1929, right? Like you could kind of see this. It's almost like it's like 12 Angry Men on a boat. I don't know, but
yeah, exactly. That's why I kind of add hints of Gold Standard at that moment, because I'm like, have I seen this movie before?
Yes.
Make it in black and white, and it's a typical nautical disaster.
Turn the color off, it's right there on Turner Classic Movies here in the States. So everybody else is trying to get Sheldon to drop the gun by this point, right? While this is happening, Sheldon sees his father again, who's taunting him, telling him, all these people just want to see you fail. Trying to play on his own insecurities, right?
Yeah.
Grace finally steps forward between Sheldon and the captain.
Right.
She's like, it doesn't matter what you see or hear is real or fake because it's real to him.
Yeah, that's right.
So Sheldon knows the way they're heading is the only way down, right? So, but she tells him, like, taking a life is never the answer. And she eventually gets Sheldon to drop the gun.
Yeah.
And just as he does this, suddenly the clouds part. The ship exits the storm, and there's a ringing that starts getting louder and louder. Because Sheldon is hearing all this ticking going on in his head from the pocket watch. It's very stressful. And then all of a sudden, the pocket watch breaks.
Yeah, and then everybody can hear that ringing, and then as soon as the pocket watch breaks at 2:18 precisely.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like a fever breaks. And I say this because I just had a fever, a couple nights ago. So that's what it kind of reminds me of, is this manic fever in Sheldon's head finally breaks. And at this key moment, all of a sudden we see Sheldon's amazed eyes as Grace tells him there's something at the bow of the ship ahead.
That's right.
So they all rush to the bow, and they look out. There's the island at
Loved
long
it.
last. And there's our cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you
And I
make
was
of
kind
that?
of, well, I mean, is this terrible of me? But I was kind of imagining the music from Jurassic Park to start
Yeah.
playing. Like,
Right.
dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I guess that's because I guess obviously it's usually whenever people approach the island, that's what starts playing. But it was great.
Welcome
and it was so
to Jupiter's Park.
Exactly. We spare no expense.
Yes.
But no, I'm this may be me nitpicking a little bit, but what happened if they arrived there after 2:18? I mean,
Right.
if it had been like 9 p.m, would the whole thing have been totally messed up? And like, oh no, we've got to do this again.
Yeah, like we got to start all over now. No. It's a good question, but I think it's more like it was predestined, perhaps.
Yeah, I suppose it is that force majeure that kind of played into everything.
Right,
so.
right. Like the universe was, steering this all at this key moment.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the planets were aligned and all that
Yes.
good stuff.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. So,
But no, it's a beautiful moment and so well played by everybody, and just that moment of clarity.
Yeah.
And you do think to yourself, what I thought to myself is, will at this point Sheldon stop having visions?
That's
Is
a good-
this like now the end of it all, where he'll stop seeing his father and everything else, and where it was almost like a temptation of, let's see if you're strong enough to do this and you're worthy enough.
well, I guess
To
we'll
guess
find it.
what's on the island.
I guess we'll find out in the next episode. But
Mm-hmm.
but at the very least, it's now validation for Sheldon, right? Here it is.
Exactly.
He's finally convinced everybody. Like everybody thinks he's crazy, and he almost proves it by trying to threaten to kill, people with a gun if they don't turn back, or if they try to turn back.
Exactly.
And now here it is. He's proven right, so everybody else is kind of have to eat some serious crow, right? Like we all thought he was crazy and we're just indulging him. But here's this island where supposedly there was no island. He was
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, because now he's kind of pointing out and going, see,
Yeah.
I was
Right.
I told you so. That's his I told you so moment.
Yeah, it's like I told you, 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 and you all didn't believe me, but there it is. Okay?
Right.
So you can suck it, you can suck it, you can suck it, you can suck it.
Yes, it is that moment, and definitely looking forward to the next episode. It was great. It was another fabulous episode. And
great.
yeah, as you said, Cirrus Crow will be consumed by all present.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. All right. What's your rating for this one?
I'm gonna actually give this 9 out of 10. Ooh, storm clouds. I think it's gonna.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give this one 9 out of 10 H.P. Lovecraft novels.
Yeah,
Because
that's well said.
Because Fitz made a comment earlier in the episode that, but talking about the reason that maybe the ships went down was maybe because of tentacle monsters that came out or something. And he's referencing H.P. Lovecraft novels.
Yeah, and apparently, he was. I think this was the period in which he was actually alive and writing these books.
Yeah,
because Gray's like,
But he
that crazy guy from Providence.
Yeah, he references the great old ones, and so
Yes.
yeah, so that's what I was thinking of.
No, I thought it was a nice callback to us talking about the almost homage to Lovecraft Country.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt validated by that when Lovecraft was actually brought up. When they're like, oh, that crazy guy from Providence? Yep, that's the very same.
Yeah. So I think this is the best episode yet. I mean, we're both give it solid 9s.
Amen. Yes, it is the best episode so far.
So that's the highlight as far as I'm concerned so far.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if the finale pays off, and we continue that. But very strong episode. I just really love the direction. And, the sea adventure, things are very tense. And I just thought it was very well acted and executed.
Oh, I'm right there with you. And I'm a kind of a sucker like our
Yeah.
mutual friend Zan Sprouse of nautical adventures where things go awry.
Right.
So,
Yep. Phantom Zone news. Well, I have something really quickly because I know we're running way long, but I did want to mention that Titans is returning for season 3 in August.
yay.
So here's my next question to Nick.
Yes.
Does that mean Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, is returning in August?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right. You heard it here.
That's right.
So at long last, maybe Titan Talk returns.
Well, and also, I mean, all those wonderful folks who have liked the page on Facebook, I think it's about time we give them some new episodes, don't you, Charles?
Well, now that we have almost 1,100 likes on Facebook, which is insane.
Yes, and we can't thank you again enough, folks.
Seriously, right? I hope you're listening. I wish we get 1,100 likes on Facebook, or for the Phantom Zone podcast. But we take what we get. But it's great that everybody is so supportive of Titan Talk. So obviously, we're going to have a huge fan base to come back to, I think, when we finally do some new episodes. So just have to wait through the end of the summer, only a few more months, and we get Titan Season 3.
Excellent.
All right. Now we get some feedback from two people, Holly Mack and Dave Proctor, but I know we're running way long. So do we want to hold that off, or do we want to read those?
Charles, I mean, I think we can read them off. I mean,
Okay.
These fine folks deserve their due, I think.
They do. I agree, but I just wanted to run it past you because I didn't know how much of a hurry you were in.
No hurry at all.
Okay, because I know we're really screwing with the schedule because this one's running way longer than I thought. All right, Holly Mack writes in, and thank you, Holly, for writing in, always.
So much.
Hey, Charles and Nick. Hey, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Before I started with a review, all this talk about the faraway island makes me wonder if we don't get a lost joke tossed in somewhere later on down the line. Well, maybe. I kind of doubt it, but maybe. Just smells like something Dharma or heck even Hydra would do. Nick, you were right. Chloe took something that didn't belong to her, and now she's going to have to pay for it. I so agree with Grace that what Sheldon is doing to their son is a punishment. Sheldon, you're repeating in a way what your father did to you, and you're really not seeing it. That's a good connection.
Well said, yeah.
Lovely, Black Star had a pocket watch inside him, wondering what that could mean. Love the flashback with Hutch and Sheldon convincing Grace to come with them and let her report on what they find out during their expedition. I wonder if Grace and Barnabas had kind of a past together. Just from the way she reacted to him, there's something in their past meeting that makes her not care for him all that much. It's a good question.
Indeedy.
Sheldon's psychiatrist really hit the nail on the head that Sheldon really doesn't want to see the world in shades of gray, just only black and white. That's causing most of his problems. The ships that disappeared sound like it could have been the Bermuda Triangle. That's what I hinted at. Of course, Chloe wouldn't tell her family that she's in the hospital. Some very tense moments when pretty much everyone in the ship finds out Sheldon has been seeing things. Man, the scene with Grace taking care of the guy who took down Ghost Beam. She really knows the rock and the hard place the younger ones are at because of the code. The scene on the boat at the end of the ghost of Sheldon's dad trying to get him to shoot everyone and Old Man Miller's warnings about it. Talk about another intense scene. Yeah, it was very intense. Really can't wait to see how the rest of this plays out. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Thank you so much, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. Great that you write in, and thank you so much for writing in so far all season.
Yes, exactly.
Only got 2 more, so write in. Don't get it. You got to keep be like Sheldon. You got to check all those boxes, right?
Perfect attendance.
Perfect attendance, right? David K. Proctor writes in as well. So hi, Dave. Very short one though from Dave, thankfully. So he writes in, "Hey fellas."
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Dave. I hope this email finds you both well. I'm a little behind on the show, but I'm really enjoying your analyses. You fellas are doing a good job of pulling out the tidbits of goodness. Well, thank you, Dave. Keep up the good work as the countdown to Loki continues. The show with your reviews is keeping us well entertained. Health and prosperity to all. Thanks, David K. Proctor.
Thank you so much, Dave. That means a lot, as always.
Yeah, it does. And you know what? Even if you're like, Dave says he's behind on episodes, at least he's still listening and appreciating what we're doing.
And that means the world. I mean, as I said, I always love hearing from our wonderful listeners, Charles. They're always so gracious and so kind. So, and I guess yes, the countdown to Loki continues.
It does. We love. Go ahead.
It seems like just a few folks are just really waiting for us to talk about that show.
Right. It's a Marvel Cinematic Universe show. Everybody's anticipating it, so
of course,
it's going to be pretty popular, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we want to hear more from all of you out there. So please be like Holly and Dave. Write to us, phantomzonecast@gmail.com. That's phantomzonecast@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter @phantomzonecast on Twitter. Facebook, of course, the Phantom Zone Podcast, or Instagram @Phantom Zone Podcast. And Nick, where can they find you out there in the wilds of the interwebs?
Well, if you decide to traverse the wilds of the interwebs, folks, you can find me spinning the very best and nothing but the best of country music on the Whiskey and Cigarettes Show. And for more information about that, you can visit our website, whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. Podcast-wise, if superhero movies are your speed, I do host Happiness and Darkness, superhero movie podcast. We discuss all superhero movies under the sun. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And last but certainly not least, Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, where myself and those fine ladies, Rachel Friend and Zan Sprouse, discuss all the Best Picture films in chronological order from 1927's Wings to present day. We are right now smack in the 50s. Next week, we will be taking on The Greatest Show on Earth with a certain Charlton Heston. So if you are fans of the circus, you might want to check that out. That is Gold Standard. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And what about you, Charles?
What, no love for Jimmy Stewart? Come on.
Oh, no, of course. We all, much respect to Buttons the Clown.
There you go. Come on, man.
Over Charlton Heston any day of the week.
Right, exactly. Less Charlton Heston, more Jimmy Stewart, I think. All right. So, as for me, of course, @Charles Skaggs on Twitter, @Charles Skaggs on Facebook, Instagram, @Charles Skaggs, or, my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on the Phantom Zone podcast. So comic book news, comic book TV news, all kinds of sci-fi stuff, or just whatever I'm interested in. News of my other podcasts for the Southgate Media Group, including Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where certain DJ Nick joined me earlier this week to discuss the Vampires of Venice, because who better, right? Who better to talk about a story set in Italy than someone from Italy, right? So I really appreciate you making the time for us. You kind of pinch hit it on that one. You helped us out and fill the gap in the schedule. So I really appreciate you doing that, and can't wait to talk some classic Who with you whenever you're ready.
We actually might have to discuss that when we close the curtain, when the curtain comes down on this episode, for sure, Charles.
All right. And then next week we're going to be discussing, Holly Mack, whom you've heard here responding to our discussions of Jupiter's Legacy, will be joining me next week, or this coming week, I should say, to discuss Closing Time, which features the return of James Corden as Craig Owens, and Stormageddon, Dark Lord of All.
And like you said, maybe some Cybermen in the process.
And the Cybermen, yeah. Okay, maybe. So I hope everybody checks that out. If you've enjoyed Holly's emails, please check her out on Next Stop Everywhere. She's fabulous.
And may I also give a free plug also to the Five-ish Fangirls, of which Holly is a part of?
Of course, yeah. We love the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. They've been very good to both of us. We definitely appreciate everything they do, and which Holly belongs to, and I definitely recommend checking them out as well, because they're just fabulous people. They need all the love from you out there in podcast land.
Amen.
All right. And then my other podcast, Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, they do with Zan Sprouse. We talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and Drunk Cinema, that I also do with Zan Sprouse, a.k.a. the Gold Standard After Party, where we talk about, we have drinks, we enjoy our favorite movies, and coming up, we just talked Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yep.
which was a lot of fun and is proving to be one of our more popular downloads, I might add. And then coming up next, though, we're going to be discussing Clue, the 1985 murder mystery movie with Christine Peruski, who's a close friend of ours, both of ours, and has appeared on Next Stop Everywhere and is now going to be appearing for the very first time as our very first special guest host on Drunk Cinema. And I hope everybody checks that out.
Sure, it's going to make for a very fun discussion.
All right. So, everybody, thanks for listening. Next time on the Phantom Zone, episode 219, Omne Pro Uno, and How It All Ends. The final 2 episodes of Jupiter's Legacy, hopefully season 1. We'll see how this all wraps up, how it all ends. Are you looking forward to this? I know I'm looking forward to this.
I certainly am, Charles.
I think it's going to be very interesting. We've talked about a lot of stuff here. We'll see how it plays out. And we'll see you next time right here on the Phantom Zone podcast. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.